Welcome to the Menschwarmers, your bi-weekly Jewish and sports podcast, as well as the television show Fauda.
We are brought to you as always by the Canadian Jewish News. Gabe, it's Tuesday, November 5th.
That's right.
One day after your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I've been 30 years old for about 30 hours now, actually.
Yeah, welcome to your 30s.
Yeah.
November 4th, easy one to remember. It's the anniversary of the death of Yitzhak Rabin.
The day they got Rabin.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But welcome to your 30s. Join me, and apropos to our new ages, we're no longer taping in our spare bedroom. We're now taping in the future baby room.
That's right.
In the Hirsch residence.
For when we're back in our home base.
Yeah.
At Jamie's home instead of mine, in the future home of little Rivka or Ruchami or
something like
Malka
that.
Or whatever biblical name you guys decide to go with.
Yeah, and our folding table that we'd been using before has now been replaced with a changing table that maybe we built too early, but it's nice to have everything in the room situated.
Oh, have you tried it out?
We have not. My wife keeps telling me that not to sit on the things that we're building for the baby because they're really not meant to, carry the weight of a large adult child. More the small child that will be coming soon. But wife and I are having a baby in a couple months, so that's really exciting news. We'll have a new little menschette on the benchette. In March, so that'll give us something to look forward to, and probably cut down on my hours to shit post on Twitter.
I'm excited to record a podcast with you after you've had no sleep, with a crying baby in the other room, and a overworked wife whom you are ignoring to make our show.
Oh yeah, that's when the real takes will come out. That's when the real exciting takes will come out. Hopefully that'll give us some interesting takes on the Israeli baseball team in Japan for the Tokyo Olympics. It'll be around that time that we'll have some interesting takes around that around then, because I will be tired and cranky, and
you can stay up to watch all of the sports in 2020. True. You can see Jessica Fox, the canoeist from Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
Tried to get on the show before.
I think the time difference is too significant to have her on at the moment. But maybe after Tokyo, she'll have some free time. After she's done training. I think in the coming months we'll probably start to profile a few Jewish Olympians that we can expect to see there. Until then, we have a great show today. We have an interview coming up with Alan Goldsher. Alan's a writer.
He's had a long weekend.
Yeah, he's had a long weekend. We're going to talk to him all about that. We're going to talk a little bit later about why that is, and has to do with the semi-demise of the website Deadspin. Which is one of our favorite websites. I think we both agree.
An influence on all of sports media in the 2010s.
For sure. And, before we get to that, I think it's, customary that we do a little Jewish sports news off the top. Gabe, anything been going on in the sports world that you've been keeping an eye on?
Absolutely. Last weekend, our favorite boy, Denis Shapovalov of Israel and Canada and Judaism, as well as some cross-wearing group. But he identifies as at least partly Jewish, and we certainly consider him a Jew.
Yep.
He sort of won and defaulted his way to the finals of the Paris Masters in tennis.
Okay.
He upset a number of higher-ranked players than him, and then Rafael Nadal saw Shapovalov waiting for him, and cowered in fear, and his back sort of gave out just so he wouldn't have to lose to Shapovalov.
Right. That's Rafael Nadal's reputation, really, is declining to play in the big tennis matches.
A challenge.
Being scared of Denis Shapovalov and ducking out of a second-tier tournament.
Well, it's a record. It's not a video.
Okay.
So
he made it to the finals? Right, where I saw he lost to Novak Djokovic.
Quite summarily. Yeah. But he had a really wonderful run, so good for him. Good for Shapovalov. Starting 57-80 off quite well.
Sure. I saw that he's now ranked 15th in the world, so that, puts him in contention, I think.
Three more. If he's 18th in the world, do we get to have a celebration?
Maybe if he gets there on the way back. But puts him in contention to have a good spot and have a good chance of succeeding. I mean,
getting some good seeds in the Australian.
Yeah, the Australian's coming up. It's the first Grand Slam of the year in January, and we'll see how he does there. I have a little bit of sports news as well. The Washington Nationals, who we talked about extensively on the previous podcast, won the World Series.
That's right.
Mazel tov to the Lerner family.
The Lerner family, the single largest landowner in Washington, D.C.
Is that right?
Other than the government.
Other than the federal government. So only one member of the Lerner family, it looked like, showed up to the White House. The Ted Lerner, the elder Lerner, I think, declined to attend. So one in attendance sort of makes sense. I think their politics tend to be more progressive, but I don't really know that they're so public with it compared to other teams. But in any event, mazel tov to the Lerners, bring a championship baseball to Washington, and
that's right.
For our Montreal fans out there, a sort of belated championship for the Expos.
It still counts, I think.
It very vaguely counts. That team was so sadly ripped away from Montreal and stolen from the city, and brought to Washington. So
is Jeffrey Loria Jewish?
I believe he is.
Yikes.
Yeah, not a great look.
No,
might have
for
to look
leaving
into
Montreal. That. Although a lot of, when they make it big, Jewish people leave Montreal. And unfortunately, the Expos were one of them.
Yeah.
Some other news. Congratulations to the Lerners. The Rugby World Cup has just ended. Congratulations to the champion, South Africa. We could not find any active Jewish rugby players.
For South Africa.
For any of the teams.
Playing rugby
we
for
could
South
not.
Africa.
How's your Invictus? Can you read it? Can you recite Invictus? Do you remember the movie Invictus?
Yeah, I remember the movie Invictus. I can't recite any of it from memory.
I think he wants us to win the World Cup.
Yeah, this is great. This is great for both of our listeners who recall the, I'm going to say, 2010 Matt Damon, Morgan Freeman movie Invictus?
That's right, where everyone spoke with a South African accent.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Morgan Freeman does a pretty good Mandela.
I think so. I think he's got the gravitas needed to play a man of that stature.
Yeah, that's right.
Though,
so who won the Rugby World Cup?
So South Africa won the Rugby World Cup. There are a couple of Jewish American national team players.
Okay, that's something.
Nate Ebner, who we've spoken about before in the NFL, plays for the New England Patriots, as well plays for the U.S. national rugby team, as well as a man named Zach Test, who was a young stud on the U.S. rugby team, but America didn't make it.
Okay.
However, there is one Jewish connection in that one of the broadcasters for Team South Africa, a man by the name of Joel Stransky.
Ah, cool.
Which Joel Stransky is a name you could see. He taught me my bar mitzvah lessons.
Right.
From Joel Stransky.
Pretty Jewish sounding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you've been to Joel Stransky's restaurant? It's great.
Sure.
He is Jewish. He is a broadcaster for the South African national team, as well a hero from a previous South African championship, 1995, which was fictionalized in the film Invictus.
Oh, cool. So he was probably represented in that movie. If not directly, then he would have been one of the guys on the field. Good to see that, even if we're not doing it on the field, that we do have lots of Jewish representation in the media booths.
Absolutely.
We talked about Andres Cantor, the famous soccer announcer.
Oh, totally.
On a previous episode, and it seems like there's other sports as well that Jews are dominating in the media.
Absolutely. And in the film Invictus, Stransky was actually played by Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son.
Okay.
So it was a meaty character, a meaty role that he gave to his own son.
Right.
So that's
good. And yet another Jewish character being played by a non-Jew. A subject for another podcast another time.
There are some wild names in rugby, especially on the South African team.
Oh, yeah.
The coach, Skonk Nicholson.
Skonk?
Skonk.
Is that his given name?
I don't believe Skonk is... I do not believe...
Skonk is his given name?
Skonk is his given name.
Still, it's a good nickname. I tweeted out some...
His name's actually Merv.
Okay,
and Merv Nicholson, you could really see as being... how do you get Skonk out of that?
I tweeted out some pictures from the account today of various sports boomers, like Chris Berman and David Wiles and stuff like that. And, boomers are pretty good, common North American sports nicknames. So maybe Skonk is like the South African boomer, Who knows what it means?
That's our Dabo.
Yeah.
Skunk.
Dabo's a pretty funny nickname, but I think it's been his nickname for his whole life.
I think, there's the golfer Andrew Johnson. Beef. And he just goes by Beef. And when they, you're watching the broadcast, Jim Nantz or Mike Tirica or what have you, it says, we go to the ninth hole for Beef on the fairway.
Beef's a pretty great nickname. Wellington Castillo, who used to catch for the Orioles, was also named Beef, but that was good. Beef Wellington.
Yeah,
that was.
I always thought it was Beef Castillo.
Beef Castillo. I think any food related nickname is you sound like a meathead, like you sound, but
Are we gonna nickname Ron Kreplach?
Maybe Brisket
Braun.
Brisket Braun's not bad. Yeah.
Ooh, let's put a pin in that one.
Yeah, we might have to say Brisket for another someone younger who we might have a chance to stick it to them.
It's true.
Like New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones has become Danny Dimes. It took him like 3 weeks, and now he's Danny Dimes. He'll be Danny Dimes for the rest of his life, even though he sucks.
It's true. I mean, Larry Bird was Larry Legend very, very quickly. And Danny
even before
Dimes.
he was a legend. Yeah.
So I guess we have to find a young Jewish player to give a food-related nickname to.
I think Brisket's good. Kreplach might be a little tough to say and pronounce. Yeah. You might get into Kike Hernandez territory there in terms of the spelling thring people off.
Maybe there could be a Kishka.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Kishka's not bad.
Yeah, Holland.
Cholin's a little tough, but Brisket's not bad, and I think people know how to say it for sure. Not exclusively Jewish, obviously, but
I think we got to find a player to call Matzah Just like Matzah Thompson.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, because it shows they're tough and gritty.
Yeah, I feel like that's good for a hockey player. The grit, and also like there's a lot of biscuit references in hockey. Ooh. So like you can say like he's cooking his biscuits with 100% matzah meal. He's kosher for Passover.
He put the kosher for Passover biscuit in the Seder plate.
Exactly, when he's taking the Seder off to go play hockey, as many of the guests at my Seder did last year to watch the Leafs in Game 6 or whatever it was.
On the Seder last year, and we talked about this in the podcast, that Larry Tannenbaum had 6 teams he owned playing in one night.
Right.
And was he at his Seder or was he watching the games?
I guess we don't know.
I guess
that leads us to our next segment of not knowing what Larry Tannenbaum's up to, because he won't come on our podcast. He's scared. He's scared to come on the podcast. But we have some corollary Larry news this week.
If you're listening, we'd love to have you on at any time. We want to hear the story of Kilmer Van Nostrand. Yeah. We want to hear the story of you and now I believe you've got 5 championship rings in the last few years.
We promise you 100% softball questions. We're not real journalists. We're not here to investigate anyone.
Right. Yes. Perhaps we want to ask you if you and Zach Hyman have ever shared some Manischewitz.
Yeah, or like gone to Panzer's Deli together or something like that.
So gone to Burger Shack
together. Yeah. A few pieces of Larry-related news. The first is Toronto FC, the local 11.
Footy squad?
How many
11.
people?
I think the local 11 is a good way to do it. Yeah.
Local 11, the Major League Soccer team for Toronto, has made it back to the MLS Finals.
Yep, they're playing in Seattle. Neither team, Toronto or Seattle, seems to have any Jewish player on the roster.
Right.
But
they are owned by Larry Tannenbaum as part of MLSE, and our friend Devin works for them, so good luck, Devin. Also not Jewish, but dating a Jewish woman, and we wish him all the luck in the world, and hopefully they bring another championship home to Championship City, Toronto, and another ring for Larry. And one other piece of Larry news, shout out as always to our mother publication, the Canadian Jewish News. In the newspaper this week, there was an article about the Raptors' trip to Israel that had been suggested by Larry Tannenbaum prior to the Raptors winning the championship. He had said before they won that if they won, they would go to Israel as a team, and the trip never materialized. So when that happened, certain people of a political bent that you can predict, I think, suggested that the reason was because of some sort of BDS or team political statement that they wouldn't travel to Israel. So that wasn't the case at all, obviously. Paul Lungin of the Canadian Jewish News investigated this and reached out to Mr. Tannenbaum, and I'm just going to read them.
So would you say that from the BDS movement, the team may have been restrained?
I don't think they were restrained.
Oh, they weren't? Perhaps submitted to to pressure?
I don't think they submitted to pressure. I mean, I think if you read this quote, I get it. You were making a BDSM joke. Oh, okay. There you go. It was pretty bad.
The confused look on our producer Michael's face makes me feel
that joke didn't land.
That joke didn't land.
Yeah. I mean, I'm usually have a pretty good uptake for your humor, so when I'm not getting it, I don't think our audience is going to either. But here's what Mr. Tannenbaum said. He said that the amount of players and coaches participating in the FIBA World Cup in China during August made it, impossible to find dates that worked for the whole team in a short offseason. Obviously, short offseason because the Raptors were in as many games as they could have been.
But do you think if they're like, oh, Malcolm Miller's busy, we can't go?
Yeah.
Is that a real thing?
No, I think probably Malcolm Miller was probably one of the few players who would have gone. But whatever, the scheduling. Anyways, he said this: I find it curious that anti-Israel activists, about whom I have little knowledge, are taking credit for our scheduling challenges. I think legitimate questions can be raised about the intentions of a group that is attempting to sow division through sport. It seems to me that sport should be used as a vehicle to bring people together. Look at the Raptors. Our approach to diversity, in part, won us a championship. So, good statement. I mean, I think that's unsurprising given the way they've run the team and the people who have been involved. And hopefully there's a trip to Israel in the future. Trying to find any discourse about this online was just a Twitter link to the CJN article, and then every reply was just pretty much alternating like 180 Palestinian flag emojis and then 180 Israeli flag emojis back and forth. So that was about it.
I find whenever you get a politically charged article online, there's always two comments. There's one person saying something totally outrageous and racist or way too hard on one side of the issue, and then the first reply is immediately someone going, I make $2,000 a week working from home. And it really it kills the discourse.
You got to hear both sides, So why don't we take a quick break there, and we'll come back and talk about Deadspin a little bit.
So a brief bit of research I've done during the break. The match this week, Toronto FC against the Seattle Sounders FC.
Yep.
Larry Tannenbaum, we know. The owner of the Seattle Sounders is a man named Adrian Hanauer.
I'm going to say not Jewish.
Who owns a very, very large bedding and linens company.
Oh,
yeah, pillows and so he is in the schmata business,
right? And
he is Jewish.
Oh, he is.
So it would have been Hanauer.
Okay.
They're from New York City, but it would have been, they're secular. It would have been a very easy way to get sort of the neutral fans who don't have a Toronto or Seattle allegiance
just cheer for Seattle
to cheer for Toronto. I mean,
for
Jewish
owner. Toronto, yeah.
But Seattle indeed also has one. So I suppose it depends on your allegiance to concrete, which the Larry Tannenbaum made his fortune in, or pillows.
Sure.
So it's sort of the stoppable force against the movable object right here.
I thought Steve Nash was involved with the Sounders. Is that different?
He's
MLS?
The Whitecaps.
What's that?
Also MLS.
No,
it's the Vancouver team.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. He's from Vancouver.
That's right.
Before we talk about Deadspin a little bit, we should remind you, as always, that we're brought to you by the Canadian Jewish News. You can find our stories at cjnews.com. Find us on Facebook at CJN Podcast Network and on Twitter at Menschwarmers.
And at many podcast apps. You've got Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, however you're listening to us now. You can
Google
listen
Podcasts.
to us through there.
Stitcher.
Gabe,
more.
Something happened last week in sports media that was pretty surprising, or not that surprising, depending on your outlook. Just give our listeners a little bit of recap. The website Deadspin, which had initially been Gawker's sports-related vertical, has been around for about 14 years. When Gawker went out of business 4 years ago, it was bought along with other companies by Univision and then branched out to Great Hill Partners, which is a media conglomerate, a private equity firm.
Great Hill Partners sounds like the name of a private equity firm that Jewish people would start to hide that they're Jewish. Like they wouldn't call it by their own name. They would be like, oh, let's call it Great Hill.
Like Cadillac Fairview.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, so Deadspin, which has always been sort of a more than just sports website reporting on, all the things that touch on the world and even things that not sports related at all, was given a mandate last week to stick to sports, and that led to the mass resignation of its entire editorial and layout team. Pretty much everyone was gone within a day or two last week, and that's pretty much the end of the website. I mean, I certainly sort of feel sad about this. It was definitely, one of my favorite websites, my favorite sports website, the first place I would check in the morning. It wasn't giving you gamers and, sports standings and stuff like that, but giving you the sort of more hard-hitting and investigative and funny and, sort of irreverent sports takes, I think, that have really come to define the way lots of media in the Twitter age operates, and certainly the way lots of sports media operates.
It's sort of an interesting take that you don't often get a very powerful sort of unified editorial front to make that decision to resign en masse when the mandate changes.
Yeah.
A lot of the journalism media is very precarious. And
understandably, I mean, people need jobs. I don't fault people for sticking it out at places that aren't always match their politics or their editorial outlook, because you need the paycheck and all that.
And the staff of Deadspin felt that they could go out on their own, and now that brings us to our guest.
Yeah. So after the mass resignation, the site sort of went dark. Nothing was really being published for a bit.
3 or 4 days, or 2 or 3 days.
Not even. I think within a day or two. And then the first post went up. It was a post about the feud between Kevin Durant and Draymond Green last year. That recently came out in the media because Kevin Durant, who left Golden State last year to play for the Brooklyn Nets, or not play because he's injured.
Not Jewish.
Got injured in the finals last year with Toronto. But he said that the feud with Draymond Green was part of what led him to leave Golden State in the first place. So our guest today, Alan Goldsher, wrote an article about why Draymond Green should have kicked Kevin Durant's ass last year, and that would have solved a lot of things. So the piece was sort of, not necessarily the story here. The piece was sort of, I think, trying to sort of emulate Deadspin style in a certain way, and just sort of, a perfectly fine piece, a blog, not nothing more than that, nothing less. But within minutes of him posting it, he got dragged on the internet, and everyone tweeted at him and yelled at him online and called him a scab. And, it was sort of an unbelievable amount of attention for what was an otherwise relatively innocuous sports take. So Alan
is kind enough to join us.
Hopefully we'll hear from him about, what happened, how he experienced everything, what led him to ultimately quit Deadspin as quickly as he joined it, and whether that had any lasting impact on his sort of writing and his interactions with other people online.
So please enjoy our interview with Alan Goldsher, who is Jewish, to bring this back to the theme of our podcast, about some his experience with sports media, the Twitter mob, and his brief time at Deadspin.
So we're joined today by Alan Goldsher. Hi, Alan. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Alan, can you tell our guests, our listeners, a little bit about who you are and your background, history, things you've done?
I'm sort of a multimedia dude. I write books and ghostwrite, and I make music. As of late, the primary thing I have been doing is ghostwriting. I can't really talk about the people whose books I have written, but there's some celebrities and business people and all kinds of stuff like that. I've written 15 books of my own.
Wow.
The best known one is called Paul is Undead. It's a kind of a retelling of the Beatles story as if they are zombies.
Okay.
Because why not?
Cool.
And I'm also still make some music. I have an album dropping actually on November 12th. It's kind of a jazz, electronica, mishmash, and I'm super proud of it. If you guys want a little more information about it, just AlanGoldsher.com.
So I guess we'll get started. You've had a pretty hardcore week. What happened?
All right, so I don't know if you guys heard about Deadspin, but they kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the listeners can just go dig on the Deadspin backstory if they want specifics. But long story short, the staff was given an edict to stick to sports. That's the big old buzzword, and they en masse walked.
Right.
I had heard about that. Now, I read Deadspin just like every other sports nerd did. But I wasn't obsessive about it. Thus, I did not know how hardcore and loyal their fan base was.
Sure.
Nor did I know how long the staff had been together, and then they've been through battles and wars, and I didn't know any of that backstory. So, walking into this clueless, I reached out to the Geo Media, the Deadspin mothership,
right,
and spoke to their HR department. I was like, hey, you guys probably need some writers, and I would love a crack at it. And they were really cool about it, and I would like to emphasize that. Geo Media has been taking a beating in the press, but in my personal dealings with them, they were nothing but cool and professional and nice. So, respect for that. So they asked me to give them some pitches. One of the gentlemen that worked there did an editor. And I gave him some pitches on last Thursday night. And then the fateful Friday came along, and I did the thing that a lot of freelancers who want to go that extra mile do, and not wait for the response at the pitch.
Right.
Just go ahead and write an article. So I went ahead and wrote an article about the silly little thing about what if because Kevin Durant had been on a podcast the previous day, and he was musing about how, if I hadn't gotten the argument with Draymond Green after that game against the Clippers, I might just re-sign with the team, which is absurd. Right? So that seemed very Deadspin-y, so I did a silly little take on that. So then the editor wrote back that he liked it, and he posted it 2 hours later, and I posted the link to the article on my Twitter. And then all hell broke loose. It was bananas. So, like I said, I've written a lot of books. I've made a lot of mistakes. But I'm just like any other dude on Twitter. You sometimes get paid attention to, you sometimes don't. oh my God, I got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tweets calling me a scab and saying I'm horrible and just railing on me for doing this article and for, I think in everybody's mind, just doing wrong to Deadspin. Now,
right.
Bear in mind, again, like I'm the idiot who didn't do the background check and didn't really do the due diligence. I just wanted to write for Deadspin. I thought it would be dope, and it was not. About half an hour into this, and not only am I getting horrible tweets, but people from my website, my email, and sending me just like really awful notes. And it's just, it's a sports website. I wrote a silly little article, and I'm just getting these just hateful missives.
Right.
This one gentleman who is putting together a freelance writers community, he emailed me, and he's like, "Dude, if you want to talk this out," and I'm like, you know what? That might not be a horrible idea. So we kicked around some stuff on the phone, and he did not at any point say, you don't apologize for that. He just laid out what he saw in the situation. And, I walked away from my computer, took a couple deep breaths, and said, you know what, this is not worth it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I said, I thought about it, and I'm like, I gotta fix this. I kind of did, again, I took a deep breath, and I thought, I'm just going to be me. This is me apologizing. This is legitimately what I believe, which is, hey, you know what? You guys are super passionate about this. You guys really care about it. The readers care about it. The writers care about it. The writers care for the other writers. Meaning the journalist community at large. And, that was the thing. Like, if it's just some random person calling me a scab, just some random guy yelling at me
sure.
on Twitter, it sucks, but it's not going to change my life.
Right.
But if it's like multiple people whose work I respect and who I've read and other people I've heard of who work for publications and websites that I respect, and they're some of them are doing they're yelling in a very harsh manner, but some of them are like, when we think this, at that point, if it's people you respect coming at you and saying maybe this isn't the best idea, then maybe it's not the best idea.
Right, and it seemed like after you, at least from what we could see on Twitter, that it seemed like after you did the sort of mea culpa, which may or may not have been your fault in the first place, but after you that, there did seem to be reach out from some of the former Deadspin writers and other people in sports media and things like that, saying like, hey, this guy did the right thing. He responded to the criticism. Maybe the criticism wasn't entirely fair, and I'm sure you got a lot of vitriol-laced invective that wasn't necessarily due. But that, you did sort of do something that was cool in the end, whether, it was because you just didn't want to put up with it anymore or because you saw the sort of the virtue of not participating in that sort of thing.
Well, something that doesn't happen very often in media, and especially the sports media and especially on Twitter, is you gave a apology that people actually liked. So often apologies make things worse. And this is obviously a pretty hardcore issue for people. So tell us what that part of the story was like.
So the apology itself, honestly, it wasn't the kind of thing where I sat there and ruminated, how am I going to word this? That's just what I felt at the moment.
Right.
People, it's all over the place. You can read it if you want to. But it's not a big deal. It's just like me saying, okay, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Sure.
So I'm going to move on. But then at the end of it, after the mea culpa went up, and after it started making the rounds, all of a sudden, all of these people were the people that had been hating on me not more than 30 minutes ago were like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm sorry.
Right, right. Maybe we were taking a little too far on, who gets to write for a sports blog.
Well, it wasn't even that. I mean, it was just, everybody, to say yes, absolutely. And we all know that is definitely an issue here.
Yeah.
But the other thing was, people were just like, you did the right thing. And, you guys are Canadian, but I know you know what's going on in the United States right
sure.
now. There's a lot of, black and white, red and blue. It's a lot of...
Really?
I know. It's weird. And I think that it's possible that people, seeing one little schmuck like me do the right thing, or at least what they thought was the right thing, they're like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. Let's roll with this. So then I started getting, the hate-filled stuff turned into the love-filled. Like, you're my hero. I can't believe you do that. Someone offered me a job.
Right.
Like, if you ever want to work in the finance world, and and someone was like, "Give me your Venmo. I want to buy you a beer." And people were like, "When are you going to put up a GoFundMe page?"
Oh God!
And I tweeted this. I was legit getting choked up. Like, I just gotten the shit kicked out of me for about 45 minutes, and then everybody's like, "You're awesome."
Right.
And at that point, I kind of sort of touched on this. I decided no more mean tweets, and because I just everybody mean tweets, and even if it's just like a small little thing about the Chicago Bears, who I've been mean tweeting the shit out of for the last several weeks.
Well, you're a human with a pulse.
Yeah, for good reason.
Absolutely. But I don't have to I don't have to be a douche. I can be a nice guy on Twitter. I can still be silly. I can still be, vulgar, but I don't have to be mean to anybody. And I'm feeling pretty good about it. I haven't mean tweeted in a while. I've just been tweeting. And, to some extent, that was the original, social media was not invented to shit on people.
Right.
Social media was invented to be sociable. And, if anything came of this, for me personally, I'm going to try and be nicer. Let me give you a little story. The day it happened, I'm talking with my wife. I told her about my, new music. That's no more mean tweet.
Sure.
We're talking about a mutual acquaintance of ours who, he's a quirky guy, and I had invented a Seinfeld-esque nickname for him. And even though he didn't really do anything to merit that nickname, I just kept calling him that name and calling him that name and calling him that name. So I called him that name, and my wife's like, you know what? If you're going to be nice on social media, you should probably be nice.
That's pretty good. Take the lessons from online, offline.
Are nicknames the mean tweets of real life world?
They might be.
A couple of years ago, I actually quit Twitter. I was pretty hard into it, and then I was working in the media full time at the time. And then at the Trump election, and it was always bad, but after 2016, it sort of felt way more real.
Right. That
it wasn't a place where people were mean to be fun. It was a place where people were mean because they were upset. And sort of for my own mental health, I decided I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. So I haven't been on Twitter since then. And I know it's not a tenable solution for a lot of people, especially not freelance journalists, but I don't miss it.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't miss being that guy on
right.
And I kind of have to use social media. I mean, I have massively stepped away from Facebook because of just a general principle with the data mining issues. But I have to use Facebook and I use all the social media to hype my stuff.
Sure,
of course.
It's the only way I'm going to be able to reach 5,000-7,000 people who are theoretically predisposed to want to listen to my music or read my book for free.
Well, it's amazing to see you sort of go through the social media, the modern Twitter spin cycle in it was really
20 minutes.
It was like a couple hours, but from soup to nuts, right? I mean, I was sort of probably not paying as much attention to work as I should have been that day and keeping an eye on what was going on and saw it. And it was just sort of like, wow, what's next? What's next? And it was just sort of, it just came and went, and it was just sort of amazing to see, I think what you were talking about you were talking about the very kind reception you had to your apology, I think was because it felt genuine and sort of in the moment, that it was just like, you recognized the nature of sort of what had happened, and you made a genuine apology to just sort of say, okay, I didn't want all this. I didn't want people calling me a scab for an hour on Twitter. So how do we resolve that?
Yeah, and again, something really good did come out of this, and oh my God, would it be incredible if other people kind of started feeling that way?
Right.
Would it be incredible if all of a sudden, oh gee, Alan's having fun not doing mean tweets. Why don't I not do some mean tweets?
Absolutely.
So the Deadspin dying could have a positive impact on society.
Maybe you could be the catalyst for that. There's a really interesting book. I'm sure people have brought this up to you a number of times, by John Ronson, called "So You've Been Publicly Shamed."
Okay, if I may interrupt on that one. So Justine.
Yeah.
Justine Sacco.
Of course.
So I used to work. Yeah, I used to work with Justine at FanDuel, right? So this was her second. Her resurrection into the world, but you know what? Even all those years later, people still were like, "Oh, you're the Justine girl," and
oh yeah,
that Alan guy. She got killed.
Yeah, and that's what the book is about, sort of. And I don't know if that sort of thing is going to happen to you, and hopefully not, especially given sort of the reverence you're experiencing now in the in the second half of this.
I mean, like, I had a great interview today with someone on for a Huffington Post article.
Great.
I had a great interview with someone for a Washington Post article. And, you know, the funny thing thinking about it is, like, I've written all these books and made all this music, and this is the one time that, like, major media comes to talk to me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's the way it works. You can't always predict what's gonna work out.
We appreciate you calling the Canadian Jewish news major media as well.
I did want to ask before we go. I wanted to mention that I saw when we were doing some research into you that you played on a Diggable Planets album and toured with them, which I just want to say is very cool.
That was my moment in the musical sun. I spent the vast majority of my life as a bass player. And, I hooked up with them when acid jazz was kind of a big old thing in New York. And,
cool.
Played with them for a year. And I got to tour the world, which is something that I never would have had the opportunity to do had I not stumbled into that gig, which leads nicely into my pimping my album.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's coming out on November 12th, a week from today. They were talking. It's called 96 BPM, which stands for 96 beats per minute. And if you're a DJ, you'll know what I'm talking about. The songs, all the songs on there are 96 beats per minute. But within that framework, I've tried to make it radically different from track to track to track. It's like 98% instrumental stuff. I play all of it, the bass, the keyboards, and I do the sampling, I mixed it, and I engineered it. And I'm super proud of it. I'm calling it Jazztronica, because it's kind of like a mix of jazz and electronica, but there's also elements of world music and rock.
Very cool.
Can you send us a sample and we'll throw it in the show?
I would absolutely do so.
Sounds great. And so before we go, you brought up the Chicago Bears. Unfortunately, no Jewish players right now for the Chicago Bears. Usually we like to highlight any Jewish athletes out there. No Jewish players, but two what we like to call Mike Jacobs All-Stars, which are guys who aren't Jewish but sound Jewish. And so for the Bears right now, you got Tariq Cohen, running back, and Eddie Goldman, the nose tackle. Not Jewish as far as I can tell, either of them.
Is Robbie Gould still a Bear?
No, not for a while.
No. So whenever Tariq Cohen does something well, I almost always tweet L'chaim Tariq.
Yeah,
fabulous.
I think that's right.
There's it's interesting. I say this sort of in reverence of speaking to the first Jewish jazztronica artist that I've ever met. But it's do you have a favorite Jewish either musical artist or athlete that you have some sort of you're always looking out for?
I mean, the default is Sandy Koufax, but
sure.
Sandy Koufax was awesome. And if you guys haven't read that Jane Lee's bio of her, which I'm sure you have, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Tariq Cohen. Why not?
Yeah, Tariq Cohen. That's a good one.
A good Mike Jacobs All-Star.
All right. Well, Alan, thanks so much. We're going to have to wrap it up there. But thank you so much for joining us. And good luck with continuing not to mean tweet. We'll see how long that goes. Wish you all the luck.
I'm good, man. I'm all nice all the time.
Thanks again to Alan Goldsher. That was a banger of an interview.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting to get his perspective on, everything that happened. I can't imagine what it's like to get, 1,500 or 2,000, whatever, Twitter notifications in 20 minutes. But
a couple of notes on the conversation. What you're going to hear is the outro instead of our usual outro will be Alan's music.
That's right, off his upcoming album.
His Jewish jazztronica record. Another quick note, we referred to Justine, strangely a former colleague of Alan's, I guess at FanDuel. The world works in mysterious ways.
Very interesting.
Justine was a big part of John Ronson's book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, which was also referenced in the conversation. Justine was a woman who tweeted a racially insensitive thing while traveling to Africa.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that.
And almost the entire Twitter world went ham on her in the 13 hours she was on the plane.
Right.
So,
and she I can't remember I didn't read John Ronson's book, although I've read some of his other work, but I think she got fired.
She lost her job. She couldn't find work. She couldn't go anywhere. And according to Alan, several jobs later, and her second comeback, I think he called it, she was still getting remembered.
Amazing. Well, I guess that goes to show, sort of what Alan talked about, that, if you get that apology out there quickly and it's genuine and you get on top of it, I mean, you too can come back from public shaming. Until next time, we're the Menschwarmers. We are produced by Alex Rose.
Today we were guest produced by Michael Freeman, the executive producer of the CJN Podcast Network.
And please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on Facebook at the CJN Podcast Network and follow us on Twitter at Menschwarmers for all of the most irreverent takes and worst Jewish sports memes on the internet.
Before we go, Larry, we're waiting for your call.
Thanks, guys.